When the Washington Wizards used their 10th overall pick on Wisconsin guard Johnny Davis, it was a weird pick to me. It wasn't that I didn't think Davis was worth a top 10 pick. I had a prospect grade on him that met the value of a top 10 pick. He was tough, a physical scoring guard that could hit tough shots, and was a good defender. However, the Wizards made moves to acquire and retain proven guards that made his path time to getting minutes really tough. And so far, we've barely seen him play in the NBA, as he spent most of his time in the G League. So what exactly is going on here? So my frustration with this situation around Johnny Davis starts with the Washington Wizards themselves. The Wizards are stuck in the worst possible scenario any NBA team can be in. They aren't bad enough to land a top pick that could change their franchise. They used to be, but they aren't that bad anymore. But they aren't good enough either to seriously compete. They've been stuck in the middle for what feels like forever now since the end of the John Wall era. And I say this as someone who is actually a really big fan of Bradley Beal and his game. When he's the long-term massive contract on your team, it does limit your ceiling. I think Beal is a really good player. I think he's been one of the most underrated players of his generation because people act like he only has good numbers because he's been on losing teams his entire career, and that's not the case. He's been to the playoffs 5 times in his career, and he's been pretty good in the playoffs. His numbers in the playoffs are really good for a guy that supposedly doesn't make the playoffs and only puts up empty stats. When you look at those numbers over 45 career playoff games, which isn't the most, but it's not as little as people make it out to be, it really speaks volumes to the kind of player that he could be in the right situation. However, while I think Beal is a good player who's one of the best shooting guards of his generation, he's not worth giving a $250 million contract extension to at this point in his career. I don't blame Beal at all for taking the deal because, let's be real here, who is turning down that much money when nobody else in the league can give you that much money? But the point still remains that giving him an extension that has a near $60 million player option by the time he's 33 years old does limit how good a team can be with him, especially when the ceiling of how good a Beal-led team is a mid-tier to low-tier playoff team at best, and that's being generous. We could also talk about the Wizards drafting over the past few years as well, but that would take too much time. If you want to watch a video going into more details about the Wizards' problems in general, Drico made a great video that you should check out. I'll link it in the description and the pinned comment along with his channel. He makes great NBA content, go check him out. However, as much as I just talked about the Beal contract, the move that frustrated me significantly more is the trade for Will Barton and Monte Morris. I don't have anything against Barton or Morris. I actually like both of them as players and wanted the Celtics to make a move for Monte Morris in particular. The problem to me is that they made a move like this to get these two players right after drafting Davis with the 10th overall pick. So essentially they made the path for their top 10 pick to get playing time really difficult, because both Morris and Barton are proven playoff contributors at the guard spot. Do you know what Johnny Davis happens to be? A guard. And while yes, Will Barton hasn't been great this season, we have seen Jordan Goodwin get opportunities where he's actually looked pretty solid from what I saw on tape. They signed Alon Wright, who's a solid bench piece, and they just traded Rui Hachimura for Kendrick Nunn. And while I don't think Nunn is that good, he still got 22 minutes in his Wizards debut, where he honestly looked pretty solid. So basically, the Wizards have done everything but given the top 10 pick a chance. In fact, you could argue they've done everything to make sure that a top 10 pick doesn't get any chances. And here's why this frustrates me so much. Players don't have control of where they get drafted for the most part. We have seen players maneuver around it to an extent, like Tyrese Haliburton in 2020, kind of telling a few teams in the back half of the top 10 not to pick him, and Mo Bamba not giving his physicals to the Memphis Grizzlies so they wouldn't take him at 4th overall in 2018. But even with those two examples, at the end of the day, teams have final say and they will pick the talent even if the talent isn't the most excited about going to that team. And there's nothing that frustrates me more than watching a team draft a player into a situation that stunts their development. This is something that really became one of my first big gripes of covering the draft when I started in 2016. Chris Dunn with the Timberwolves and Dragon Bender with the Suns are two of the biggest examples of players going into situations that stunted their development, in my opinion. And I feel that Davis is in a similar situation to those two when they were rookies, where they didn't get much opportunity at the NBA level and got inconsistent low minutes at best. The one difference is that Davis has gotten real minutes in the G League, where Bender and Dunn never even saw the G League during their rookie seasons. Now, this isn't always the Wizards aren't giving him a opportunity problem either. It is mostly that, but there is another side of this as well. Davis has looked pretty underwhelming in the G League from what I've seen on tape, and the stats back it up. He's averaging 10 points per game on 33% from the field over 8 regular season games in the G League, and he averaged around 11.8 points per game on 40.4% over 14 Showcase Cup games. So he really hasn't shown the Wizards much in the G League to suggest he should be getting minutes in the NBA, especially when he's been worse in the G League than any guard in the Wizards rotation has been at the NBA level. And a big reason for Davis' struggles, in my opinion, is something that comes down to his pure basketball playing style. At Wisconsin, Johnny Davis had a ton of responsibility. He was a heavy on-ball player who took a bunch of tough shots, and to his credit, he made a lot of those shots in college and was really good, and he helped carry Wisconsin to being the best regular season team in the Big Ten and a top 15 AP ranking on top of being an All-American that year. But in the NBA, you have to be a special type of player to have that kind of skill set translate to the NBA at a high level without really having a lot of complementary skills. And while I think that Davis is clearly very talented, he's not quite that level of player. I'm not saying he can't translate to the NBA and he's going to flame out. It's too early to talk about anything like that. But I do think off-ball skills need to be a focus for him in order to stick in the league. I think there is hope for Davis to work out in the league. He's a good defender with a high motor, he's a tough physical athlete, a decent mid-range shooter, and there is passing potential. I do think a few things need to happen for him to work out and maybe even live up to a top 10 billing. First, he needs to improve as a three-point shooter. That's one of the most important things. That was an area of concern entering the league, but he isn't a terrible free throw shooter and has decent mechanics, on top of the fact that, again, pretty decent mid-range shooter, so I do think that's an area he can grow in, but only time will tell. We can't guarantee that he will, but it's not a lost cause situation, and it's also not like he's not confident either. The confidence is there, there's some indicators there, but again, we will see with time. Also, I think the Wizards just need to give him some form of opportunities in the NBA. I do think the fact that he is getting a lot of run in the G League is beneficial for his development to get game speed reps. But I do think that, again, the best experience is game experience, and I do think NBA reps would help out a lot. A lot has to happen, but I do think it's too early to give up on Johnny Davis. He's only a rookie at the end of the day, and while it hasn't been an ideal start, to put it nicely, anything could happen. I always like to preach patience when it comes to rookies who struggle early on. But in this particular situation, when I was researching it, it did bring out a lot of things that frustrate me about how certain teams are run and how they handle prospect development. And given the recent history I've seen with other top 10 picks in similar development situations, it is concerning to see what's going on with Johnny Davis. But I am rooting for him to figure it out because he was a fun player to watch at Wisconsin and someone I think has a lot of talent and I do think has the potential to be good. I just hope that the Wizards also see that potential and maybe are a bit less strict with their development with him, and hopefully he does work out, but only time will tell.